The hands on the clock on my desk were almost noon when loud voices came from the first floor. I set aside the magnifying glass and the tiny screwdriver I had just used to fix the pendulum in the antique wall clock my neighbor had brought me to repair. The shouting didn't stop. Veronica was arguing with Noel again. About what this time? It didn't matter. I rubbed my tired eyes. At 73, my eyesight wasn't what it used to be, even with special glasses for small jobs. But my hands still remembered every millimeter of the clock mechanism, every detail, and I could almost blindly disassemble and reassemble any watch. "Grandfather, may I come in?" Oliver's quiet voice interrupted my thoughts. "Sure, come on in." My 7-year-old grandson slipped into the room, carefully closing the door behind him, as if trying to shut out the noise downstairs. He always did this when his parents were fighting. He sought refuge in my workshop, where it smelled of oil and wood and metal, where it was always quiet, except for the ticking of dozens of clocks. "What are you fixing?" he asked, climbing into the high chair beside me. "Mr. Pringle's clock. You see, the pendulum was off, so it was 5 minutes behind every 24 hours. Oliver nodded gravely, though I doubted he fully understood the technical details. But he always listened attentively, asked questions, not like his parents. "Mom said we're going to be here a while longer," he said, chattering his feet. "She told Dad that they needed to save up for longer." I hummed. For a while longer. When they moved in with me, we were talking a couple months. It had been a year now. The house I'd shared with Greta for 45 years, the house where we'd raised Veronica, was now filled with other people's things, other smells, other habits. "Don't you like living with me?" "Na frontinun," Oliver asked, concern in his eyes. "No, not at all." I ruffled his reddish hair, the same as my Greta's. "You're the only reason I'm glad you're here." He smiled, and I caught myself thinking I'd told the plain truth. Oliver is the only person in this house who actually noticed me, not just tolerated me as an unavoidable obstacle. Something rumbled downstairs and I flinched. "It's nothing," Oliver said quickly, as if to comfort me. "Dad just hit a vase." My vase, I thought. The Chinese porcelain that Greta and I had brought back from the only trip we'd ever taken abroad. For our 30th wedding anniversary. "Veronica," Noel's voice came. "Your father left his tools on the kitchen table again." I sighed. My tools. On my kitchen table. In my house. "I'll go clean it up," I said to Oliver, getting up. The pain in my knee came back to me with a sharp stab. "I can do it for you," the boy offered. "No." I shook my head. "I'd rather do it myself." As I walked down the stairs, I could hear Veronica grumbling as she picked up the shards of the vase. Noel stood leaning against the kitchen counter, phone in hand. "Oh, there you are," my daughter said as I walked in. "Haha, Dad, how many times do I have to tell you not to leave your stuff anywhere? We have a small child in the house. A little kid. Who's 7 years old? Who's more neat and tidy than his father? Sorry." I gathered up the tweezers and small butter dish that I had actually forgotten when I made myself toast this morning. I was distracted. "You're always absent-minded," Veronica sighed, straightening up with a dustpan full of shards. "And anyway, maybe you should move your workshop to the garage. All those clocks in your room, ticking at night. Noel can't sleep well because of it." We agreed that my room would remain inviolate, I reminded her, trying to keep my voice calm. Yeah, of course," she waved it away. "Just think about it, okay?" Noel finally got off the phone. "Theo, have you seen my blue tie? The one with the stripes?" "No," I answered. "I don't go in your room." "Greta's room," I corrected myself mentally. The bedroom where my wife and I had spent nearly half a century, where she had died on a quiet spring morning 5 years ago, holding my hand. "Maybe you accidentally took it in the wash with your stuff?" Noel insisted. "I only do my own laundry," I replied, feeling the irritation building up inside. "And I can tell the difference between my own clothes and other people's." Veronica gave me a disapproving look. "Dad, we're just trying to find a tie. There's no need to react like that." I silently walked out of the kitchen, clutching my tools in my hand. This house had once been my sanctuary. Now I felt like an intruder. After lunch, which passed in tense silence, I decided to get some air. Samuel, my friend since high school, lived 3 blocks away. We agreed to meet in the small park between our houses, a tradition we'd maintained for years. Sam was waiting on our usual bench, feeding breadcrumbs to the pigeons. In his 75, he looked younger than I was, tall, still slender, with a mop of gray hair. A widower like me, but unlike me, he lived alone. His son and his family settled on the other side of the country. "You look lousy, Theo," he greeted me, shifting on the bench. "What's the matter? Is your health acting up?" I shook my head, sinking down heavily beside him. "Health's fine. As healthy as it can be at our age. It's just—" I paused, searching for words. "Family problems?" Sam guessed. "How are your tenants doing?" "They're not tenants," I countered. "They're my family. The one that took over your house." I didn't answer right away. It was the first time someone had articulated what I'd been thinking about all this time. "I feel like an outsider, Sam," I finally admitted, "in my own home. Veronica, she's always been stubborn, even as a child, but now she acts like she's doing me a favor, letting me live under the same roof as them. And her husband. He's a piece of work, I remember," Sam said. "Why don't you kick them out?" "It's your house, after all," I sighed. "How could I kick my own daughter out? And Oliver? It's not the boy's fault." "How about a nursing home?" Sam suggested it. "My nephew put his mom in a nice place. They say it's nice. It's got company. It's got care." "No," I shuddered at the thought. "I'm not going to live out my life in an institution. My home is all I have left of Greta." Samuel looked at me for a long moment, then put his hand on my shoulder. "Theo, listen to an old friend. I know what it's like to cling to the past, but sometimes you have to think about yourself. If you're unhappy in your own home, something has to change." "I'll think about it," I promised, though I had no idea what I could change. We sat for a while, talking about nothing. The baseball game that had been broadcast yesterday, the new bakery that had opened on the corner of Maple Street, the weather that was getting colder as fall approached. The usual conversations of two old men. When I got home, Veronica was in the living room hotly discussing something on the phone. When she saw me, she quickly ended the conversation. "Daddy, where have you been?" "I was worried." "Shuck it to him." "I met with Samuel," I answered, taking off my jacket. "The usual. You could have warned me. At your age, walking alone—" "At my age, I've been walking alone for 70 years. I interrupted her, feeling the irritation return. "Sonar, and I'm still able to walk to the park and back without an escort." Veronica pressed her lips together. "I'm just worried about you." "No, you're not," I thought, but kept silent. It would be a pointless argument. That evening, when Noel came home from work, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. I couldn't make out the words, but Veronica's tone was insistent, almost aggressive. I decided not to interfere and went up to my room, where Mr. Pringle's watch was waiting for me. Before I went to bed, Oliver came to say goodnight, as usual. It was a little ritual of ours that Veronica knew about but never participated in. "Grandpa," he asked, sitting on the edge of my bed, "have you ever been afraid of something really badly?" I wondered. "Of course I have. Everyone is afraid of something." "And what did you do?" "Do what?" I smiled. I looked my fear in the face. "You know, fear is like a shadow. It seems huge when the sun's behind you. But when you turn to face the sun, the shadow disappears." Oliver thought about what I said. "I'm afraid Mom and Dad are going to fight again," he said finally. "They're always arguing about money and about—" He stopped, biting his lip. "About what, Oliver?" "Nothing," he answered quickly. "Just money. I didn't insist. Whatever was bothering the boy, it wouldn't be right to push him." "Don't worry," I hugged him. "Adults argue sometimes. It doesn't mean they don't love each other or you." He nodded, but I could see in his eyes that my words didn't convince him much. When Oliver left, I lay awake for a long time, listening to the clock counting down the seconds, minutes, hours. The world outside the window was sinking into the darkness of night, and I thought about what Samuel had said. Maybe it really was time to make a change. But what exactly? And how? I didn't know the answers to those questions. But for the first time in a long time, I began to think about the future. Not just the past. The morning sunlight was filtering through the loose curtains when I woke up to a strange noise. Through the drowsy haze, I didn't immediately recognize what was going on, but the sound was definitely coming from the hallway. I pulled on my robe and walked out of the bedroom. The door to the closet, where old things and documents were kept, was ajar. Inside, Veronica was methodically going through stacks of papers, putting them in different stacks. "What are you doing?" "Schön moin," I asked, and she flinched, clearly not expecting to see me. Daddy, you scared me. She tried to smile, but it was unconvincing. I just thought I'd clean up a little. There's so much junk in here. I looked around the closet. There was a lot of stuff that had accumulated over the decades. Old albums, boxes of letters, documents. But it was my junk, my memories. I'll take care of my own stuff, I said, trying to speak calmly. Don't worry. Come on, Veronica kept smiling. It's not hard for me. Besides, a lot of things can be thrown away. Why keep accounts from 20 years ago? I looked at the papers in her hands. They weren't bills, but letters from Greta, letters she'd written to me when I traveled on business trips in the early years of our marriage. Put everything back, please. My voice sounded harsher than I intended. I'll decide what to throw away and what not to. Veronica pressed her lips together, but she didn't argue. Whatever you say, I just wanted to help. She left the closet and I stayed behind, looking at the evidence of her help. Some boxes had been moved, folders open. On the floor lay an open folder with the deeds to the house. I slowly gathered up the unfolded papers, put them back in place, and closed the closet door. Something told me it wasn't old memories that interested my daughter. At breakfast, Veronica was unusually friendly. She even fried bacon and eggs for me, though she usually just reminded me to watch my cholesterol. Daddy, Noel, and I were thinking, she began, pouring me a cup of coffee. Maybe we should redecorate a little. That wallpaper in the living room is all faded, and the couch. I like my couch, I interrupted, and the wallpaper too. But it's so old-fashioned. She splashed her hands. And the heavy furniture takes up so much space. If we moved everything, it would make the room seem more spacious. I slowly put my fork away. Veronica, when you moved in, it was a temporary residence, not renovation. But we want what's best for you. She looked at me with that condescending smile she was getting more and more often. You'll be more comfortable in a more modern environment. I'm comfortable now. Daddy, you're just used to it, she sighed. At your age, people are afraid of change. That's normal. But sometimes you have to. At my age, people know what they want. I got up from the table. And I don't want change in my house. I left before finishing my breakfast, feeling my daughter's eyes on me. Going up to my room, I sat at my desk and stared at the unfinished clock. My hands were shaking slightly with irritation, and I knew it was best not to get to the fine work in that state. A couple hours later, I came downstairs and heard voices from the kitchen. Veronica was talking to Noel, who had apparently returned from his morning run. Not cooperative at all, I heard myself say. I tried to start a conversation about the renovation, but he just said no. Don't rush things, Noel's voice sounded calm, judicious. We have time. The main thing is to get him to agree to what we discussed yesterday. That would solve everything. I'm not sure he'll agree. You know how stubborn he is. I'll have to agree, Noel chuckled. In his position. They stopped talking when they saw me in the doorway. Veronica was fussing over the stove, and Noel was staring at his phone. Dad, do you want some tea? Sermon in. As if nothing had happened, my daughter asked. No thanks. I walked to the refrigerator, feeling the awkwardness in the air. I'm just getting water. Theo, Noel got off the phone. I was thinking, maybe you should get your eyes checked. You walked past me on the street yesterday and didn't even say hello. I didn't see Noel on the street yesterday, but I decided not to argue. Maybe you're right, I picked up a bottle of water. I'll make an appointment with the eye doctor. As I was leaving the kitchen, I heard Veronica say quietly, See? He's already forgetting basic things. For the next few days, I observed a strange change in my daughter and son-in-law's behavior. Noel suddenly began to take an interest in my health. He asked about my blood pressure, suggested vitamins, even brought some brochure on the prevention of senile dementia. Veronica came into my room more often, ostensibly to bring clean linens or ask if I needed anything. But I noticed her eyes sliding over the shelves, the desk drawers, the safe in the corner. One day, returning from a walk earlier than usual because of a sudden rainstorm, I found them both in my bedroom. Veronica was standing by the dresser, pulling out the top drawer, and Noel was studying the lock on the safe. What are you guys doing? I asked from the threshold. Both of them jumped like thieves caught in the act. Dad, we were looking for your pills. Veronica tried to justify herself. You said you had a headache, so we... My pills are in the bathroom. I wouldn't move. And I wasn't complaining about a headache. You didn't? She exchanged a quick glance with Noel. I must have gotten something mixed up. They squeezed past me awkwardly and hurried downstairs. I slowly circled the room with my gaze, trying to figure out what they were looking for. The dresser drawer where I kept my personal papers, the safe with my will, insurance policy, and savings. Something was going on, and I didn't like it at all. That evening, Oliver came home from school unusually excited. He flew into my room waving his notebook. Grandpa, we have a family history project. We have to make a family tree and write about the most interesting events. Will you help me? I smiled, putting my work away. Of course I will. What exactly are you interested in? Everything. He flopped down on the bed. How did you meet Grandma Greta? Who were your parents? Is it true you fought in the war? I didn't fight, but I served. I sat down next to him. It was a long time ago before I met your grandmother. Tell me. His eyes shone with curiosity. So I began to tell him about my childhood in a small town north of Clarksburg. My parents, a mechanic father and a mother who sewed part-time. My older brother Hugh, who died in a car accident when he was only 22. The first time I'd seen Greta on the bus, she was carrying a huge bouquet of lilies and reading a book, oblivious to everyone around her. Oliver listened with his mouth open. Occasionally he made notes in his notebook, but more he just absorbed the stories. And then what? Did you talk to Grandma right away? No, I smiled at the memory. I was very shy. I tracked where she got off and I started riding that route every day, hoping to see her again. And did you? 2 weeks later. She was reading again, this time without flowers. I plucked up the courage to sit next to her. I asked about the book. What was she reading? Pride and Prejudice. Your grandmother loved novels, Oliver wondered. Why did you become a watchmaker? It had something to do with Greta, too. I leaned back on the bed. Her father was a watchmaker. He had a small workshop on Main Street. When we started dating, I used to go there a lot. Old Werner didn't like me very much, didn't think I was good enough for his daughter, but it was interesting to watch him work. That precision, that meticulousness. I asked him to teach me and suddenly I had a talent for it. And he gave you the workshop? I laughed. No, he didn't. He sold it long before Greta and I were married, but he left me his tools and some antique clocks. That's where my collection began. We talked all the way through dinner. I talked about how Greta and I had bought this house. It seemed huge at the time and needed repairs. How we spent weekends painting the walls, replacing the floors. How Veronica was born, small, screaming, with a mop of dark hair. How I'd opened my workshop and how, gradually, the fame of my craftsmanship had spread throughout the city. Oliver asked questions, clarifying details, sometimes laughing, sometimes nodding gravely. I could see his eyes light up when I talked about family traditions, about trips, about small but precious memories. Can I look through the family albums? He asked. We need pictures for the project. Sure, I stood up. They're in the closet. We went together to the closet where Veronica had gone through my things that morning. I opened the door and turned on the light. The albums should be on the top shelf, I said, looking around. I remember putting them up there after. I stopped. The shelf was empty. That's odd, I muttered, looking around the closet more carefully. They should be here. Maybe Mom moved them somewhere else, Oliver suggested. She said she wanted to do some cleaning. Maybe, I frowned. Let's go ask. Veronica was in the living room discussing something with Noel, leaning over a magazine. When they saw us, they quickly closed it. Veronica, have you seen the family albums? I asked. The ones that were in the closet. Oh, the albums. She waved her hand nonchalantly. I took them to the garage. They were taking up too much space, and there was so much dust. I need pictures for a school project, Oliver interjected. Can I take the albums? Honey, why do you need old pictures? Veronica smiled. Or, I have plenty of pictures of you on my phone. Much better quality. But I need the old ones, Oliver insisted, to show what my great-grandparents looked like, and my grandfather when he was young and… Okay, Veronica sighed. Noel, darling, could you go to the garage? The albums are in a box by the old bicycle. When Noel came out, I noticed on the coffee table the catalog they had so hastily closed. Sunny Hill Senior Residence. Care and Comfort. A nursing home brochure. So this was the solution to the problem they were talking about. What's that? I asked, nodding at the catalog. Veronica followed my gaze and turned slightly pale. Oh, she faltered. It's for Aunt Martha, my mom's cousin. You remember her? She's all alone, no children, so we thought. Aunt Martha died 3 years ago. Veronica knew it well. We went to the funeral together. Huh. I see, I said, not wanting to accuse her of lying. Oliver, let's go help your father with the albums. In the garage, Noel had already pulled out a box of photo albums. Oliver went through them enthusiastically, admiring the old pictures. Look, Grandpa, is that you? How young you look. I looked at the picture, me in my military uniform smiling, with a guitar in my hands. Yes, that's before I was demobilized. I'm 22 here. And this is Grandma? Wow, she's beautiful. Greta was laughing in the picture, her red hair fluttering in the wind. We were on a picnic by the lake just before we got married. She was always beautiful, I said quietly, until the very last day. We sat in the garage until dark, going through albums while I told the stories behind each picture. Oliver chose a few images for his project, and we went back to the house. Before bedtime, he came to me again, but this time with a question that clearly troubled him. Grandpa, is it true that old people are sent to special homes when they can't take care of themselves? I froze, searching for words. Fully. It happens, I answered cautiously. But usually it happens when a person is seriously ill or lonely. You're not alone, Oliver said affirmatively. You have me. Yes, I have you, I hugged him. And I'm not going anywhere from my home. He clung to me tighter like he was afraid I might disappear. Promise? I promise, I stroked his head. Now go to bed, it's getting late. After I saw Oliver off, I went back to my room and sat for a long time, looking at the pictures we'd taken out of the albums. Faces of the past looked back at me from the yellowed pictures. Parents, brother, friends from my youth, Greta at different times in our lives, little Veronica. Something was going on in my house and I didn't like it. The nursing home catalog, the talk of solving the problem, the searches of my room. It all added up to an unpleasant picture. For the first time in a long time, I felt not just irritation, but real fear. What are they up to? And how far were they willing to go? The next few days passed in tense anticipation. I tried to pretend that I didn't notice anything, but inwardly I was wary. Veronica and Noel continued to behave strangely, either overprotective or unexpectedly cold. I began to notice the way they looked at each other at the table, the way they cut off conversations when I entered the room. By Friday, Veronica suddenly announced that she was having a family dinner on Sunday. There will be Noel's parents and our good friend Perry Dawson and his wife, she said as she chopped vegetables for the salad. You like Perry, remember? You met him at Oliver's birthday party last year. I vaguely remembered a full balding man with a loud laugh. I didn't remember much about him, and I certainly couldn't tell if I liked him or not. I see, I replied without enthusiasm. Sunday then. Yes, I'll make your favorite casserole. She smiled a little too broadly. Just don't overwork yourself before the weekend, okay? Save your strength. Her concern sounded fake, like a poorly played role. I nodded and retreated to my room, wondering why they needed this dinner. Something told me that Perry Dawson was more than just a friend. On Saturday, Oliver had helped me finish his family tree for a school project. We glued pictures onto a large sheet of cardboard, signed names, drew connections. Grandpa, why doesn't Mom ever talk about her childhood? Oliver asked, coloring a frame around a picture of his grandmother. I've asked, but she always says she's busy. She must have a lot on her mind, I replied diplomatically, though I was frustrated inside. Was Veronica really that ashamed of her past? Are you going to tell me more? Sir, Oliver looked at me hopefully. Like how Mom was a little girl? I smiled and began to tell. About how Veronica decided when she was 5 that she wanted to be a magician and made me buy her a magic set. About how she was afraid of thunderstorms and would climb into bed with Greta and me during thunderclaps. About her love of drawing, about her first bicycle, about how proud she was when she lost her first baby tooth. Oliver listened, eyes wide, as if I were telling him a story about a complete stranger. Perhaps to him it was true that little girl in my stories had little in common with the reserved and perpetually disgruntled woman his mother had become. Deceit. Why had she changed? He asked suddenly, making me wonder. People change, Oliver, I answered after a pause. They grow up. They face difficulties. Sometimes they forget who they were when they were kids. I don't want to change like she did, Oliver said seriously. I want to be like you. His words warmed my heart, but they worried me at the same time. I didn't want a rift to grow between Oliver and his mother. Shumni. Your mom loves you, I said, though I wasn't sure if it was enough. She just shows it in her own way. Oliver nodded, but I could see that he wasn't too convinced. In the evening, having finished the project, we went downstairs. Veronica and Noel praised the family tree with exaggerated delight, but I noticed Veronica frown when she saw some of the pictures. Why did you take those pictures? She asked me quietly when Noel pulled Oliver away. I told you, you could have used more modern ones. It's our family history, I said. Your son has a right to know it. She pursed her lips, but didn't say anything. Sunday came faster than I wanted it to. The house had been in a flurry since morning. Veronica was cooking. Noel was arranging the furniture. Even Oliver had been forced to put on a decent shirt. I'd also been asked to look presentable, which in Veronica's mind meant wearing a suit. It's just a family dinner, I tried to object. Why so formal? Daddy, please, she almost begged. It's important to us. I gave in, putting on an old but still good suit that I usually kept for special occasions. I refused to tie my tie, though. Noel's parents arrived first, a prim couple who always looked at me with barely concealed disapproval. Then came Perry Dawson and his wife, a thin woman with a strained smile. Mr. Hutchins? Perry shook my hand vigorously. It's good to see you again. I nodded politely, trying to figure out what it was about this man that seemed so unnatural to me. Dinner began tentatively. The conversation didn't flow, despite Veronica's best efforts to liven it up. I silently ate the casserole, which, by the way, wasn't my favorite. Greta never added broccoli, which I couldn't stand. After the main course, when Veronica brought dessert, Perry Dawson coughed and suddenly spoke over me. Mr. Hutchins, Veronica tells me you were an excellent watchmaker. Mum. I'm not a bad watchmaker now, I countered, noting the past tense in his phrase. Oh, of course, he smiled quickly. But it must be hard to do such painstaking work now. Your eyesight, your hands. My hands are fine. I set my fork aside. And my eyesight, too. Dad, Perry's just worried, Veronica interjected. We're all worried. You've been absent-minded lately, forgetting things. What exactly have I forgotten? I looked her straight in the eye. Well, she hesitated. When last week you forgot to turn off the stove, and you don't remember where you leave your tools. I didn't remember the stove, but I decided not to argue. Something told me this conversation was following a pre-planned script. Mr. Hutchins, Perry spoke again. I'm an elder care consultant. I specialize in finding the best solutions for people who need extra support. That's what it is. An elder care consultant, not just a family friend. Very interesting, I said coldly. And what solutions do you offer? There are wonderful residences, he began enthusiastically, with professional staff, medical care, organized leisure activities. People of your age feel safe in such places. People my age, I repeated, feeling anger rising inside. And they're all happy to be there, surely. Dad, Veronica put her hand on mine. We just want you to be happy. This big house, all these stairs, cleaning, it's too much for you. And it's not too hard for you, I pointed out, especially when I'm not here. There was an awkward pause. Noel cleared his throat. Theo, you misunderstand. We're thinking of your well-being. Of course, I smiled, but I felt my lips quiver. Hey, my well-being, not the house you'll get when you fuse me into this institution. Daddy, Veronica exclaimed, how can you think like that? How am I supposed to think that? I looked around at everyone here. Santara, you move into my house, go through my things, pull out my papers, bring in this counselor without even telling me, and you expect me to happily agree to leave? No one's talking about moving immediately, Perry interjected in a soothing tone. It's a process. We could start with day visits. Sunny Hills offers an excellent adjustment program. Sunny Hills was the name from the very brochure I'd seen. Everything was falling into place. I'm not going to Sunny Hills, I said firmly. Siwon, not for a day, not for an hour. Theo, be reasonable, Noel's mother said. It is unwise to live alone at your age, and Veronica and Noel can't look after you forever. They have their own lives. I didn't ask them to look after me, I objected. And I didn't ask them to move in with me. It was their choice. A temporary choice, Veronica reminded me. We didn't plan to stay here forever, but then we saw how hard it was for you to be alone, and we decided. Decided what? Mom, I looked at her, my only daughter, and didn't recognize her. Take my house and send me to an old folks' home? It's not an asylum, she exclaimed. It's a modern complex with, call it what you want. I got up from the table. But I'm not going anywhere. This is my home, and I'm staying here. I left the table and went upstairs to my room, feeling my heart pounding. There were muffled voices coming from downstairs, Veronica explaining something, Perry giving advice. They were talking about me as if I were an unintelligent child or an old man out of his mind. After calming down a little, I realized that I couldn't stay in my room all evening. It would look like defeat, like an admission of weakness. Gathering my will in my fist, I went back downstairs. Dinner continued, but the atmosphere was icy. Oliver sat with his eyes down in his plate, and the adults pretended as if nothing had happened. When Veronica saw me, she smiled strained. Daddy, there's still dessert left. Do you want some? No, thanks. I sat down in my seat. Keep talking. I'll be listening. Perry was clearly uncomfortable, but he quickly pulled himself together. I was just explaining the benefits of residency care. It's not necessarily a permanent placement. Many people start with short visits. I understand, I interrupted him, but my decision remains the same. The rest of dinner was spent in awkward attempts to change the subject. The weather, politics, Oliver's schoolwork, it all sounded fake. Finally, the guests started to head home. Perry lingered in the hallway, trying to slip me his card. Hey, Emery, just in case, and he said, if you change your mind or want to get counseling. I didn't take the card, and it remained on the table in the hallway. When everyone had gone, Veronica attacked me. How could you? She hissed as Noel took Oliver upstairs. We invited Perry here specifically to tell you about the possibilities, and you acted like a stubborn child. I was acting like a man who was trying to take his house away, I said calmly. And don't act like this dinner was for my benefit. You had it all planned out. Yes, I did. She wasn't hiding her irritation anymore. Because we're worried about you. You're getting old, Dad. You need care. I need respect. I looked her straight in the eye. And the right to decide for myself how I want to live my life. She turned away, defiantly picking up the dishes. You just don't know what's best for you. That was the end of the conversation. I went upstairs to my room, feeling a mixture of anger, frustration, and deep sadness. Veronica had always been stubborn, but when had she become so heartless? Before I went to bed, Oliver came in to see me. He looked depressed. Grandpa, are you okay? He asked quietly. I'm fine, I tried to smile. Just a little disagreement with the adults. It happens. He sat on the edge of the bed, fiddling with the edge of his pajamas. Can I tell you something? It's a secret. Sure, I moved closer. What's wrong? Oliver looked back at the door and lowered his voice to a whisper. My mom wants to put you in a nursing home. Even though I'd already realized it, it was strange to hear a 7-year-old say that. Why do you think that? I asked cautiously. I heard her talking to Daddy, he continued in a whisper. She said that you had to be persuaded, and that if you couldn't be persuaded, we'd have to do things differently. That you'd be better off where you'd be looked after, and that the house would soon be theirs anyway. She said this Perry guy would help with the paperwork. I felt a chill go down inside. Act differently. The house will be theirs soon. What were they planning? Declare me incompetent? Forge my signature on some papers? I understand. I kept my exterior calm, though my insides were seething. Thank you for telling me. Are you mad? Oliver looked at me worriedly. No, I shook my head. Not at you. Never at you. What are you going to do? Good question. What could I do? Don't worry about it. I put my hand on his shoulder. I'll figure it out. But for now, don't tell anyone about our conversation, okay? Oliver nodded seriously. I promise. When he left, I sat still for a long time, thinking about what I'd heard. Then I walked slowly to the window. The house across the street was dark, but there were still lights on in a couple of windows. People were living their lives unaware of the drama unfolding in our house. I waited until the house was completely quiet. Veronica and Noel were still talking in their bedroom, but eventually they were quiet too. The only thing that broke the silence was the ticking of the clock. Dozens of mechanisms counting down the seconds of my life. When I was sure everyone was asleep, I quietly walked over to the safe hidden behind the painting. Old but solid, it opened with a barely audible click. Inside were the deeds to the house, an insurance policy, some cash, and most importantly, my will. A document drawn up shortly after Greta's death, in which I left all of my possessions to Veronica. I pulled out the will and reread it carefully. A simple text in which I declared my daughter my sole heir, hoping she would keep the house where she'd grown up, where her mother had lived. How wrong I was. The solution came instantly. I have to change the will. And not just change it. I need to act quickly before Veronica and Noel have time to carry out their plan. I folded the documents neatly, took some cash, and tucked it all into the pocket of my old jacket. Then I dressed quietly and went downstairs, trying not to squeak on the steps. The front door might have creaked, so I went out the back. The night air was cool. I inhaled deeply, feeling my head clear. Well, it was time to visit an old friend who could help me make things right. Patrick Loomis, my longtime friend and lawyer, lived across town. The only way to get to him at this hour was by cab. I walked a few blocks away from the house before pulling out my phone and calling for a car. The cab arrived 10 minutes later. The driver, a young guy with an earpiece in his ear, looked at me in surprise. Shuri, are you going too far at this hour, Grandpa? I have an urgent matter, I said, giving him the address. He shrugged his shoulders and drove off. The city outside the window was unusually empty and quiet. The sparse streetlights illuminated the deserted streets, creating an almost ghostly atmosphere. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to the apartment building where Patrick lived. I paid and got out, feeling uncertain. It was late, almost 1:30 in the morning, but I couldn't wait until morning. Something told me that procrastination could ruin everything. I pressed the bell of Patrick's apartment and waited. A minute later, a sleepy voice answered the intercom. Who is it? It's Theodore Hutchins. Sorry for the late visit, Patrick, but I need your help. It's urgent. There was a pause, then the intercom beeped and the door opened. I stepped into the entryway and slowly made my way up to the third floor. Patrick was already waiting for me at the open apartment door, wearing a robe and a worried face. Theo, what's wrong? I need to change my will, I said without preamble. Today. After my meeting with Patrick, I came home in the morning. Luckily, no one had noticed I was gone. Veronica and Noel were fast asleep, and Oliver was usually the last to wake up. I slipped quietly into my room, hid the new documents in a secret place behind my dresser drawer, and went to bed feeling oddly relieved. Patrick didn't ask too many questions. He listened to me carefully, drew up a new will, and certified it, promising to formalize all the formalities in the next few days. Veronica was no longer my sole heir, and that gave me time for the next step. In the morning, I came down for breakfast later than usual. Veronica threw me a concerned look. Daddy, are you okay? You look tired. I didn't sleep well. It was true, though not all of it. After last night's conversation, her face softened. Anakin, Dad, we just want to... I know what you want, I interrupted, pouring myself a cup of coffee. But let's not start this day with an argument. She nodded, clearly pleased that I hadn't continued yesterday's confrontation. Noel, staring down at his phone, didn't even look up. Only Oliver smiled at me when I sat down at the table, and I winked back at him. Our little secret. After breakfast, when Veronica had left to run errands and Noel had taken Oliver to school, I pulled out my old laptop and started researching. First was to find out the real value of some of the pieces in my watch collection. Over the years, I'd collected some really valuable pieces. Vintage pocket watches, rare wall clocks, a couple of antique chronometers that I'd gotten from grateful customers. It turned out that the clocks were worth more than I had realized, especially a 19th century Swiss pocket watch that I had restored with my own hands 15 years ago, and a marine chronometer that had been brought to me from England by the son of an old friend of mine. I took some photographs and sent them to an antique dealer I knew, with whom I sometimes cooperated. Morris was an honest man and wouldn't ask too many questions. In the evening, a reply came back. Morris was interested in several pieces and was offering a very decent sum. We agreed to meet in a couple days. The next morning, I waited until the house was empty and went to the bank. I needed to open a new account, separate from the one Veronica knew about. She had access to my main account just in case, as she explained, but now that just in case was taking on a disturbing connotation. At the bank, I was greeted by a young female employee with a polite smile. "What can I do for you, Mr. Hutchins?" "I'd like to open a new account," I explained, "separate from the one I already have." "Of course," she nodded. What type of account are you interested in?" "Something with good access, but not linked to my main account. And if possible, I'd like to receive statements via email rather than mail." She helped me choose the right option, and I completed the paperwork. The new account was opened in my name, but no one knew about it but me. That was the first part of the plan. Back home, I decided to start with the hardest part, selling part of my collection. After selecting the 5 most valuable pieces, which at the same time had no particular sentimental value to me, I carefully boxed them up. These watches were rarely displayed prominently, so Veronica would hardly notice their absence. "What are you doing, Grandpa?" Oliver's voice caught me off guard as I stowed the last of the clocks. Getting some clocks ready for repair," I lied, hating the need to lie to my grandson. "It wasn't a big deal." He nodded, but I could see an understanding in his eyes that didn't match his age. "You're going away, aren't you?" he asked quietly. I sat down on the edge of the bed and gestured for him to join me. "Listen, Oliver, sometimes adults have to make tough decisions. And yes, I might have to go away for a while. But that doesn't mean I'm leaving you. You're leaving because of Mom. That wasn't a question. That was a statement." "I'll leave to do what I think is right," I answered carefully. "And I'll always be there for you, even if I'm not under the same roof. You'll be able to come visit me." "Nashiwan, promise?" "I promise." He hugged me silently, and I felt a prick of conscience. My leaving would be hard on him, but the alternative was even worse. The next day I met Morris at his little antique store. He examined the watch closely, admiring its condition. "Well done, Theo." "As always," he smiled. "But why did you decide to sell it? As I recall, you always said your collection was not for sale." "Circumstances change," I said evasively. Morris nodded understandingly. "I can offer this amount." He wrote a figure on a piece of paper. The sum was more than decent. I agreed without bargaining, and an hour later the money was transferred to my new account. Now I could move on to the second part of the plan. I called the realtor I'd found through an ad on the internet and made an appointment. I needed something small, cozy, and most importantly, far from my current home. Linda Pierce, an energetic, middle-aged woman, met me in her office. "Mr. Hutchins, nice to meet you. You said you were interested in a small house?" "Yeah, something compact. 1 story. Maybe in the Pine Grove neighborhood?" Pine Grove was a 20-minute drive from downtown, but it was a different world. A quiet, green neighborhood with low houses and lots of parks. "I've got a few options there." Linda perked up. "One would be especially suitable for a person in your situation." "My situation?" She meant my age, of course, but I didn't bother to correct her. We looked at a few listings and one caught my eye. A small but neat cottage with a garden, not far from the park. 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and most importantly, a small room that could be turned into a workshop. "I'd like to see the house," I said to Linda, "preferably soon." She suggested we go right away, and I agreed, even though it meant I might not be back before Veronica arrived. However, it was time to show her that I wasn't accountable for my every move. The cottage was even better than it looked in the pictures. It was small but bright, with a comfortable layout and a well-tended garden. I immediately imagined how I could live here, with my watch, with my tools, without the constant feeling that I was an extra in my own home. "How much?" I asked when we finished looking around. Linda quoted a price that was well within my means, especially with the money from the sale of the watch. "I'll take it," I said firmly. "Are you sure?" She looked surprised at my quick decision. Usually people think for a few days, consult with their family. My family trusts my choice." It was an outright lie, but who cares now? And yes, I am confident. We went back to the office where I made a down payment and signed the necessary papers. The house wasn't mine yet, but the process was underway. Now, the hardest part was waiting for the formalities to be completed and not arouse the suspicions of Veronica and Noel. By the time I got home, it was late. Veronica met me in the hallway. "Daddy, where have you been?" I was worried. "I went to see Sam," I lied, taking off my jacket. "Then we went for a walk and I was running a little late." "You could have called." Her voice sounded accusatory. "I was about to call the hospitals." "I'm sorry, I didn't realize I'd been gone so long." I tried to walk past her, but she blocked the way. "What's been going on with you lately?" She was staring at me. "You're different. Different. Ever since we talked about the residence." "I'm just tired," I answered, deciding to play on her suspicions. "I've been having trouble sleeping lately." "Maybe you're right about my age." Her gaze softened. "See? That's why we're worried. You shouldn't be walking around town alone like this." "Siwim, you're probably right." I gave her a weak smile. "I'm going to lie down." She backed away and I went up to my room, carefully hiding my satisfaction. I had the perfect disguise now. Let them think I was starting to give up. It would give me time to finalize all my preparations. Over the next week, I continued my double game. During the day, I met with a lawyer, a bank manager, and a realtor, discussing the details of buying a house and transferring funds. And in the evening, I pretended to be tired and distracted, forgetting simple things and agreeing with Veronica when she talked about the benefits of Sunny Hills. "I've been thinking about what you were saying," I told her one night at dinner. Uh, Maybe I really should at least visit the place." Veronica's face brightened. "Really? Oh, Daddy, I'm so glad. We can go there next week. Just to see it. No strings attached." "No strings attached," I repeated, trying my best to be humble. Noel, who hadn't seemed very interested in the conversation before, suddenly perked up. "It's the right thing to do, Theo. You'll see. It's really nice out there." "I'm sure it is," I nodded, "if you both think so." After dinner, when I went up to my room, Noel followed me. "Theo, I was going to say—" He hesitated in the doorway to my room. "I'm glad you've changed your mind. It simplifies things." "Simplifies what?" I asked innocently. "Well, the whole situation," he waved his hand uncertainly. "Veronica was worried about your stubbornness, and now everything's going to be okay." Fine for who, I thought, but I said aloud, "Yes, I understand. Sometimes it takes time to accept the inevitable." He nodded, clearly pleased with my submission, and left. I closed the door and let myself smile. They had taken the bait. The next day I met with Linda Pierce again. The deeds to the house were almost done, just a few formalities to go. "Are you sure you want it done so quickly?" she asked. "Usually the process takes longer." "I'm willing to pay extra to speed things up," I said firmly. "The faster the better." She agreed, though her eyes were curious, but she was a professional and didn't ask unnecessary questions. In the evening of the same day, Veronica caught me studying the Sunny Hills brochure, which I had left in a prominent place. "You're really interested," she said with satisfaction. "If I'm going to have to move there, I want to know what's in store for me," I said with a deliberate sigh. "It says here that they have creative workshops. Maybe I can continue working on the clock." "Of course you can." She sat down next to me on the couch. "It's a great place for hobbies and lots of people your age. You'll make friends." "What about the house?" I asked the question casually. Veronica tensed up a little. "Nothing yet. Noel and I will continue to live here and look after it. It's still yours after all." "At least for now," I added mentally, but nodded gratefully. "Thank you. This house. It means a lot to me." "I know, Daddy." She squeezed my hand. "That's why we're going to take care of it." The hypocrisy in her voice almost made me give myself away, but I held back. Just a little more. Just a little more. The next morning I felt so bad that I couldn't get out of bed. Dizziness, weakness, nothing special, just age. Veronica fussed around me, offering to call a doctor, but I refused. "It'll pass," I assured her. "You just need to rest." She reluctantly agreed, but she checked on me every hour all day, bringing me tea and soups, even taking my temperature and blood pressure. Her concern would have been touching if I didn't know her true motives. "See how hard it is for you to be alone," she said, adjusting the pillows. At Sunny Hills, you would have had professional care. Yeah, you're probably right, I agreed in a weak voice. I'm becoming a burden. Net, что ты? Она поспешила заверить меня. We just want you to be taken care of properly. I have work. Noel has his own things to do. We can't give you the attention you deserve. What a touching concern. And what a convenient sickness of mine. Just when I got the call from Linda that the house papers were ready and I needed to go to her office to sign. I'm thinking of getting up tomorrow, I told Veronica. I don't want to lie around all day. How you feel is up to you, she stroked my arm. Take your time. When she left, I quietly got out of bed and went to the window. It was getting evening. Things were about to change. I thought about Oliver, about how he'd feel about me leaving, but there was no other choice. Better to live apart and see each other once in a while than to be locked up in a nursing home and deprived of all freedom. There was a knock at the door, and I hurried back to bed. Come in, I called. It was Oliver. He slipped quietly into the room and closed the door behind him. Grandpa, are you really sick? He asked in a whisper. I winked at him. Not really, no. Sometimes you have to fake it a little to buy time. He smiled, clearly pleased to be privy to the secret. Mom told Dad that it's going to be resolved soon, he informed me, sitting down on the edge of the bed. She said you almost agreed to move. Your mom sees what she wants to see, I shrugged. Don't worry, it'll be fine. You're really not moving into that nursing home? Never, I answered firmly. But you'll have to keep one more secret. He nodded, his whole demeanor showing willingness. What was it? Tomorrow I'll feel much better and go for a walk. If Mom asks, tell her I went to Sam's. Okay, he paused. What about the real thing? Actually, I have things to do, I answered evasively. Nothing dangerous, don't worry. He nodded, accepting my answer, and left, closing the door quietly behind him. I walked to the window again, looking out at the city at night. Tomorrow I would sign the papers for a new house. One more step towards freedom. It had been a week since I signed the papers for the new house. I already had the keys and I'd furtively, under the pretense of visiting Samuel, started moving my tools and some of my personal belongings there. Not too much, so as not to arouse suspicion, but the essentials. Veronica was so engrossed in the plans for my placement at Sunny Hills that she didn't notice the slow disappearance of some of the items. On Thursday evening, as Oliver and I sat in my room taking apart the mechanism of an old alarm clock that I had promised him I would fix, Veronica came up to us with wonderful news. Daddy, I've arranged a visit to Sunny Hills on Saturday, she announced, beaming with enthusiasm. The director will personally give us a tour. And guess who else is coming? I have no idea, I continued to sort through my watch without lifting my head. Perry Dawson, remember him? He'll help with the paperwork and talk about the adaptation programs. They also have temporary housing for a week, so you can get a taste of what it's like to live there. I looked up and saw Oliver tense up. I shook my head slightly, letting him know I had it under control. What if I don't like it? I asked calmly. Veronica hesitated. Well, you're a reasonable man. I'm sure you'll like it. It's very nice there. Comfortable, safe, interesting people. And yet, what if I don't like it? I insisted. Then we'll think about other options, she answered uncertainly. But you have to give it a chance. For us. For your health. Okay, I agreed. Saturday is Saturday. She brightened, not noticing Oliver's concerned look at me. That's great. Also, I invited Perry and his wife to dinner tomorrow night, just to socialize a bit before the visit. He knows so much about the problems of the elderly and how to solve them. Great, I went back to the alarm clock. I'll be glad to see him again. When Veronica left, Oliver asked quietly, Are you really going to this house? No, I answered firmly. But they don't need to know that yet. He breathed out a sigh of relief. The next day I noticed Veronica fussing over making dinner. She'd made my favorite dish, rosemary roast chicken, cleaned the house, even made Noel put on a decent shirt. It all seemed like an attempt to give the impression of the perfect caring family. Perry Dawson and his wife Helen arrived at 6 sharp. Perry shook my hand with exaggerated cordiality. Mr. Hutchins? It's good to see you in good health. Veronica tells me you've taken an interest in Sunny Hills. Yes, a little, I answered discreetly. I want to find out what it is, since my daughter is so concerned about it. Oh, you won't regret it. He patted me on the shoulder as if we were old friends. Sunny Hills is not just a nursing home. It's a true community of like-minded people. People of your generation find friends, activities, even new romantic endeavors. He winked, and I suppressed the urge to wince. Over dinner, Perry continued to tout the charms of Sunny Hills, and his wife occasionally chimed in with stories of how their parents or grandparents had blossomed since moving there. A friend of mine told me that her father had flatly refused to even think about moving there at first, Helen chirped. But now he's chairman of the chess club and says he's never had a better time in his life. Fascinating, I said dryly. And the most important thing is safety, Perry continued, as he poured himself a second batch of casserole. At your age, it's so easy to fall, to forget something, to leave the stove on. And there's professional staff, 24-hour surveillance. Your family's safe and you're comfortable. And how much does all this comfort cost, I asked, getting to the point. Perry hesitated a little. Well, it depends on the program and the type of accommodations. But I'm sure we can find the best option. Veronica mentioned that you have savings and insurance. And a house, I added. Yes, and a house, he nodded. In some cases, you can use real estate as part of your living expenses. We have a special assets for care program that is very popular with our clients. So I have to give up my house to be accepted into your residence? I tried to make my voice sound naive. You don't have to give it up, Veronica interjected hastily. Just some paperwork. The house is still in the family. In some family, I muttered. Excuse me? She asked me again. Nothing, I smiled. Go on, it's very interesting. Perry didn't seem to notice my sarcasm. The point is that we provide a full range of services for a reasonable price. And importantly, we free your loved ones from having to take care of you on a daily basis. They can simply come and enjoy companionship without stress or obligation. No commitment, echoed in my head. So that was it. They want my home, and they want to send me somewhere where I won't interfere with their plans. When do I have to make a decision? I asked, pretending to seriously consider the offer. Well, the sooner the better. Perry leaned closer. We've got a couple of nice rooms open right now, overlooking the park. But they're going fast, and I've arranged Saturday's excursion as a special exception for you. That's very kind of you. I took a sip of water. And what documents will I have to sign? Standard accommodation agreement, medical consent, he listed, curling his fingers. And depending on the payment program you choose, possibly asset transfer documents. But don't worry, I'll explain everything in detail. I'm sure you will, I nodded. I'll look forward to Saturday. After dinner, when Perry and his wife were about to leave, he took me aside. Mr. Hutchins, I know this is a difficult decision, but trust me, the longer you put it off, the harder it will be to adjust. At your age, change is not easy. Oh, my age, I repeated slowly. All of you are very concerned about my age. It's natural, he didn't notice the coldness in my voice. Your loved ones love you and want the best for you, and I want to help too. Of course, I shook his hand, holding back my disgust. See you Saturday. When they left, Veronica was glowing with joy. See, Daddy, Perry's so knowledgeable, so attentive. He'll help us figure it all out. I'm sure he will, I agreed. He's a very, professional man. And you'd really consider moving? I could hear the hope in her voice. I promise I'll give it serious thought, I said, which was true, though not in the way she meant it. Veronica hugged me happily, for the first time in a long time. Thank you, Daddy. You don't know how happy I am. Everything's going to be okay, you'll see. I hugged her back, trying to find in this woman something of the little girl I'd once rocked on my lap. Something of Greta, of her kindness and honesty. But I couldn't find it. My daughter had become a stranger. Friday morning, Veronica drove to Sunny Hills to, as she put it, finalize the details of the upcoming visit. Noel was at work and Oliver was at school. I had a few hours to act. I called Samuel and asked him to come over. What's wrong, Theo? He asked when we sat down in my room. You sounded worried. I need your help, I said. Tomorrow, I outlined my plan to him. Sam listened, sometimes frowning, sometimes nodding. Are you sure you want to take this step? He asked when I was done. It's pretty drastic. I don't have a choice, I shrugged. They're not going to stop. First Sunny Hills for a week, then a month. and then I won't be able to come back, and the house will go to them. What about Oliver? Sam knew how attached I was to my grandson. We have a deal, I said. He understands. Sam took a deep breath. Okay, I'll help. After all, what else are old friends to do but participate in each other's ventures? We shook hands, sealing the pact. When Veronica returned, she was in high spirits. Daddy, everything is ready for tomorrow. We have to be there by 11. There will be a tour, then lunch at their restaurant. The food is said to be excellent. And then, if you want, you can talk to some of the residents. There's a man there, a former engineer. He's 78. I think you'd be interested in talking. Nah, sounds like fun. I tried to make my voice sound interested. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. You are? She paused, surprised by my enthusiasm. I'm so glad you've changed your attitude. People change, I said philosophically. Sweet. Even at my age. In the evening, when the house was quiet, I took out the small suitcase I had hidden under the bed a week ago. It contained the essentials, a few sets of clothes, toiletries, pictures of Greta, Oliver, our family at the best of times, and of course the paperwork, the house, the bank account, the new will. I sat down at my desk and wrote 2 letters. One for Veronica, explaining my decision and asking her to understand, if not accept. The second was for Oliver, which he was to receive when he was older. Finished, I tucked the letters into the pocket of the jacket I was going to wear tomorrow. Everything was ready. Tomorrow I would play my last card. I didn't sleep well that night, tossing and turning, listening to the sounds of the house. The old walls, the familiar creaks, the ticking of the clock. It had all been a part of my life for so long. This is where I was happy with Greta. This is where Veronica was born and raised. It's where I spent the best years of my life. But home isn't just the walls, it's the people who live in it. And now this house is filled with strangers, strangers' intentions. It's no longer my refuge. In the morning, Veronica was unusually sweet and caring. She cooked my favorite breakfast, helped me to choose clothes decent for the visit, even offered to help me shave. I can do it myself, I said softly. After all, I wasn't completely helpless yet. Of course, Daddy, she smiled. I just wanted to help. Noel was suspiciously friendly, too. He even offered me his new sweater to make a good impression. It's full of old people like me, I grinned. They don't care what I'm wearing. But the staff does care, he insisted. First impressions are important. I agreed to wear a sweater so I wouldn't arouse suspicion. Oliver watched in silence, occasionally glancing at me questioningly. I winked at him discreetly, and he smiled slightly. At 11:30, we got into Noel's car. Veronica talked all the way about how good it would be for me at Sunny Hills, what interesting programs there were, what a caring staff. And most importantly, you won't be alone, she repeated. There will be people around who will understand you, who will share your interests. Why do I need other people when I have a family? I asked innocently. Veronica hesitated. Well, we'll visit you. Often. Every week. Right, Noel? Huh. Of course, he said, keeping his eyes on the road. Whenever we can. Sunny Hills was a complex of modern buildings surrounded by a well-kept park. At first glance, it looked like a nice place. If you don't know that it's a beautiful prison for those who have become inconvenient to their families. In the parking lot, Perry Dawson was already waiting for us, beaming with a smile. Shocking. Welcome to Sunny Hills, he exclaimed, shaking everyone's hands. Mr. Hutchins, are you ready to see your future new home? More than ready, I replied with a smile that must have looked unnatural on my face. We entered the main building, and Perry began his tour. A spacious foyer with comfortable chairs where residents can socialize. A dining room with a variety of meals catering to all dietary needs. A library, a recreation room with a TV, even a small movie room. And this is our creative studio. Perry opened the door to a bright room with several tables. We have painting and sculpting classes here, even computer classes. Did you mention you like to work with clocks? Here you can continue your hobby. I took a look around the room. Small tables, simple tools, bright but uncomfortable lighting for delicate work. It looks interesting, I said. Perry continued to show me the other rooms, and I discreetly checked the time. It was almost noon. It's time. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom, I said, interrupting Perry's tale of a great physical activity program for Golden Age people. Sure, he pointed in the direction. Second door on the right down the hall. I nodded and headed in that direction, feeling Veronica's eyes on me. She was obviously afraid I might change my mind or cause a scandal. In the restroom, I pulled out my phone and sent a prearranged message to Samuel. It's time. Then I took a deep breath, preparing for the next step. When I returned, Perry was already leading my family to the living quarters. This is where we have our residence apartments, he pointed down a long hallway with doors on either side. The rooms are singles and doubles with private baths. Very comfortable and cozy. He opened one of the doors. This, for instance, could be your room, Mr. Hutchins. Park view, lots of light, plenty of room for your personal belongings. I looked around the room. Clean, neat, impersonal. A typical hospital room disguised as the comforts of home. Sayanama, very nice, I said. How many people live in one room like that? It's a single room, Perry said proudly. Just you. There are cheaper and simpler options, of course, but Veronica said you'd prefer a private room. How thoughtful of her. I looked at my daughter, who was smiling nervously. And when do I have to make a decision? Well, Perry hesitated. We have a few spaces available right now, but they're filling up fast. If you decide to stay today for a trial week, we could get the paperwork done right away. Today? I acted surprised. But I'm not ready. I don't have my things. I have to pack. Oh, that's not a problem, Veronica quickly intervened. Sonny, I can bring everything you need tomorrow. And basic toiletries are provided here, right, Mr. Dawson? Absolutely, he confirmed. It's all included in the package. I looked around thoughtfully, pretending to consider the offer seriously. All right, I finally said. Let's try this trial week. When do I have to sign the papers? Perry's face brightened. Right now, if you don't mind. I've got it all set up. We can go to my office. I nodded, noting how Veronica and Noel exchanged victorious glances. They thought they'd won. They were wrong. I'd spent the evening the night before at my new home, where Samuel had brought me right after I'd escaped from Sunny Hills. The maneuver was simple but effective. While Veronica and Noel filled out paperwork in Perry's office, I asked permission to get some fresh air in the park, promising to be back in 20 minutes. Perry readily agreed, and Veronica was too busy finalizing payment details to pay attention to my leaving. Sam was waiting for me at the park gate, as agreed. A few minutes later, we were racing away. I ignored the phone calls from Veronica, muting them. Let them worry. It was a small price to pay for their plans for me. My new home greeted me with silence and emptiness. The furniture was minimal. A bed, a table, a couple chairs, a bookshelf Sam had brought. But I loved it. Everything here belonged to me. No one was going through my stuff, pulling out drawers, or judging me as a waste product to be gotten rid of. Are you sure you can do this alone? Sam asked me before he left. I could stay the night. No, man, I patted him on the shoulder. I'm fine. Tomorrow's a big day, and I need to get ready, and you've already done more for me than anyone. He nodded and left, and I was alone in the room that would soon be my new workshop. I set up the tools I'd brought, hung a few pictures on the walls, and sat by the window, looking out at Pine Grove asleep. Despite my fatigue, I didn't sleep well. Thoughts of tomorrow, of Veronica's reaction, of Oliver's future, all of it swirled around in my head, keeping me awake. By morning, I felt defeated, but determined. At 9 o'clock, I called Veronica. She answered after the first ring. Daddy, where are you? We're going crazy. The police. Calm down, Veronica, I interrupted her. I'm all right. I'm home. Home? Her voice sounded confused. We arrived in the evening. You weren't there. I didn't mean that house, I said. I have a new house. I want you and Noel to come to my place at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I'll text you the address and bring Oliver. What? What are you talking about? What new house? Dad, you're scaring me. 2 o'clock, Veronica, I was adamant. We need to have a serious talk. I hung up without waiting for her reply and sent a text with the address. Then I called Patrick and confirmed that he would be at my place at 2:30 with the documents. All I had to do was wait. I spent the morning settling into my new home. I unpacked, arranged the few dishes, hung my favorite clock on the wall in the living room. Life went on, albeit in a new place. Patrick arrived right on time with a briefcase full of papers. Everything is ready, he said. The deed to the house is signed and registered. The house is all yours. The new will is also in order. Veronica won't be able to contest it unless, of course, she tries to have you declared incompetent. She could try, I said thoughtfully, but I don't think she'll succeed, especially after her tricks with Sunny Hills. Oh, anyway, you're legally protected. Patrick put the papers on the table. Do you want me to be present for the conversation? I shook my head. No, it's a family matter, but thanks for the offer. He left 10 minutes before the appointed time, wishing me luck. I settled into a chair in the living room, preparing myself for the most difficult conversation of my life. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and went to open it. Veronica stood on the doorstep, pale and puffy, with circles under her eyes, obviously from a sleepless night. Next to her was Noelle, with her usual disgruntled expression. Behind them was Oliver, who flashed a smile when he saw me. Grandpa. Hello, Oliver. I smiled at him. Come in, all of you. They walked into the house, looking around in bewilderment. What is this place? Veronica asked, looking around at the modest furnishings. Whose house is this? Mine, I answered simply. Sit down. We need to talk. I pointed to the couch and chairs in the living room. Veronica and Noelle sat on the couch, and Oliver sat in the chair next to me. So, I began when everyone was seated, I have news for you. I sold the house on Clover Street. Veronica blinked as if she didn't understand what I was saying. What? What house? Our house? My house, I corrected her. The one you and Noel were planning on getting when you sent me to Sunny Hills. Dad, what are you talking about? She tried to sound puzzled, but it was unconvincing. We wanted the best for you. This house, it's too big for you alone, and the stairs and the… Veronica, I interrupted her, let's not do this. I know everything. About your plans, about your arrangement with Perry, about the Assets for Care program. I'm not blind or deaf, and I'm certainly not out of my mind like you two would like to think. She fell silent, and Noel finally got off his phone. Theo, you've got it all wrong, he began in his condescending tone. We were really thinking of your welfare. The house could be used as part payment for living in a nice place where you'd be looked after. It's reasonable. Anatinum. Reasonable for you. I looked him straight in the eye. The house would go to you, and I'd spend the rest of my life in an institution where you'd stop by once a month for a routine visit. If you ever did. Veronica started to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. I sold the house to the Bright family. You know them? Good people, with 3 kids. They've been looking for a bigger house for a while. The deal's closed, the money's in. You can't, Veronica whispered. This is our family home. It's where I grew up. It's where my mom lived. Yes, your mother lived there, I nodded. A woman who would never send her father to a nursing home for an inheritance? And by the way, that house was never ours. It was mine. I bought it, paid off the loan for 30 years, kept it in order. I owned it, and I had every right to sell it. Noel flushed. You had no right. We lived there. We've got things, furniture, which I didn't charge you a dime for, I reminded him. You lived in my house for free for over a year. I fed you, paid your bills, tolerated your behavior. And in gratitude, you decided to put me in a nursing home. Veronica cried, but I felt no pity. Too many lies, too much manipulation. Where are we going to live now? She sobbed. Have you thought about that? You'll have to find a new place to live, I answered. You have a month. I've arranged for the Brights to move in on the 1st of the month. Until then, you can stay in the house to find another place to live and pack. A month? Veronica exclaimed. That's impossible. Where are we going to find a place to live in a month? And money. We can't afford to rent something decent. You both work, I shrugged. You'll find something you can afford. You could rent a room in Sunny Hills. They say it's very comfortable. Noel jumped up from his seat. This is outrageous. We're going to sue. You can't just throw us out on the street. I can, I replied calmly. The house was mine, and I sold it. You were guests, not tenants. You didn't sign any contracts. You didn't pay any rent. You could try to sue, but Patrick assured me you'd lose. And legal fees would only make your financial situation worse. Veronica looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Shirayir, who are you? She whispered. My father would never do this. Your father never thought his daughter would try to send him to a nursing home against his will. I parried. Times change. People do too. I pulled an envelope out of my pocket and placed it on the table. There's $10,000 in here. It's enough for a down payment on rent and to get back on my feet. Consider it my last gift to you. Noel reached for the envelope, but Veronica intercepted his hand. We don't need your money, she said proudly. We'll manage on our own. As you wish, I tucked the envelope back into my pocket. The offer still stands. If you change your mind, call me. There was a long pause. Oliver listened silently the whole time, shifting his gaze from me to his parents and back again. One more thing, I added. I've rewritten my will. The bulk of my estate will now go to the New Horizons Children's Center. They help disadvantaged children get an education. Veronica turned even paler. You disinherited me? Not completely, I clarified. You'll get a small amount, but not the main inheritance. Why? Her voice trembled. Because I wanted you to be taken care of by professionals? Because you wanted to get rid of me so you could take my house, I said bluntly. Fuck, because you lied to me, manipulated me, went through my things. Because you were no longer the daughter I knew. She turned away, and Noel finally exploded. Screw you and your inheritance. You think we need your pittance? We can do without it. Come on, Veronica, we've got nothing to do here. He stood up and pulled her by the arm. She stood up, still looking at me with a mixture of resentment and confusion. Daddy, she began. Goodbye, Veronica, I said. I hope someday you'll understand. She didn't say anything, letting Noel lead her out of the room. I heard the front door slam. Oliver and I were the only ones left in the room. He was staring at me with his eyes wide open. They're really angry, he said quietly. Yeah, I sighed, and they'd be angry for a long time. But it was necessary. He nodded with unchildlike seriousness. I understand. They wanted to send you to that house where there are a lot of old people, and you didn't want to. That's right, I smiled at him. You're a very smart boy, Oliver. A car horn honked outside. Noel was obviously rushing Oliver. I have to go. The boy got up from his chair. They're waiting. Wait, I stopped him. There's something I want to show you before I go. I took his hand and led him down the hallway to one of the doors I hadn't opened yet. Nastinon, this will be your room, I said, swinging the door open. When you come to visit me. The room was small but cozy. A bed, a desk, a bookshelf, all new, bought especially for him. There was a map of the world on the wall. Oliver had always been interested in geography. My room? His eyes widened in surprise. Yes, I nodded. I've arranged with your parents for you to come to my place on the weekends. If you want to, of course. Of course I want to, he exclaimed and threw himself around my neck. Thank you, Grandpa. I hugged him tightly, feeling the tears coming. This little man was the only one worth fighting for. The car horn sounded again, more insistent. You have to go. I let him go reluctantly. But you can come back this Saturday. I'll show you around the neighborhood. There's a great park with a pond where you can feed the ducks. Ottery, I'll definitely come, he promised. Can I bring my sketchbook? Sure, I smiled, and we'll draw ducks together. He ran toward the exit, but turned around at the door. Would you be happy here, without us? I thought for a moment. I'll be calm, I answered honestly. And that's a lot. He nodded, as if he understood more than a 7-year-old could, and walked out of the house. I went to the window and watched him run to the car, where his glum parents were waiting for him. Noel said something sharply to him as he got into the back seat, but Oliver just shrugged. The car started abruptly and disappeared around the corner. I was alone in my new home. The trees rustled outside the window, reminding me that life goes on, that the seasons change, that the world doesn't stop because of our little dramas. I walked to my new workshop and sat down at the table. In front of me lay the old pocket watch I was about to repair, a small mechanism in which every part has its place and its purpose. If one gear fails, the whole mechanism stops. Our family was such a machine, and something in it had broken long before Veronica moved into my house. Maybe it started while Greta was still alive. Maybe after she died. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that now the mechanism has stopped completely, but there was a new rhythm in my life, a new ticking. Freedom from manipulation, from the feeling that I'm an extra in my own house. Freedom to be myself, even if it meant being alone. And then I had Oliver. A boy who reminded me of Greta, of a time when things were simpler and more sincere. A boy who would come to visit me on weekends, draw ducks with me, listen to my stories. It was enough, at least for now. I picked up the magnifying glass and leaned over the clock, feeling my hands automatically perform the familiar motions. Life went on, and in this new life, I was the master of my own destiny. No one else decided for me where I should go and how I should live, and that was its own bitter but real victory.